Hello, this is Blue Star, Defender of Equestria, and this is my next Focus on video. Make your mark and the Crystal Brighthouse. Roar! Wow, did the Lighthouse get an upgrade or what? Roar! Unfortunately, at the end of My Little Pony: A New Generation, the Lighthouse, which was Sunny's home, was, slightly, wrecked. Oh. So apparently the ponies decided to build a new and bigger and better Crystal Brighthouse. So roar! There's parts of me actually would kind of like to know the story of of how this place was created and almost why. It's like, why did the ponies decide to not just rebuild the lighthouse, but make it even cooler and better than it was before? And why the main five were chosen to live there in My Little Pony: A Maritime Bay Adventure. It's like Sunny mentions I just can't believe we live in this magical place. So roar! So I'm gonna go through the pictures of mostly Make Your Mark, but probably a couple of Tell Your Tale as well at some point, because I must admit in the Make Your Mark we didn't get a good look around this place, but we did get a good taste of what this place is like. So I'm gonna start off with this image, which is basically the very first shot of the Crystal Brighthouse that we see in Make Your Mark, and even from here, it's pretty cool. Unfortunately, this is the engineer and analyst in me trying to figure out where everything is. It's kind of odd that Zip came from this angle, because I believe that Zephyr Heights is that way, but but whatever. So anyway, let's move on. This is a slightly better view of the Crystal Brighthouse, I must admit, slightly later in the movie, and the skies are not so friendly and happy, but this is a pretty good long shot of the Crystal Brighthouse, and it definitely is a pretty impressive place. And I have to say that I like this architecture and this design a lot better than I like Twilight's castle from Friendship is Magic. Even though its design is kind of odd looking. I mean, it's got these, gold wing things, a giant model of the crystal at the top, and all those sorts of things. It feels like it belongs here. It doesn't feel artificial or fake. This feels like something that some pony might actually build, because actually they did, so... But overall, I like its design. Again, it's a little bit odd, but that's because it's kind of one of a kind. It's not just a lighthouse, it now holds the Unity Crystals, which are now the most important artifact in all of Equestria, so that requires a slightly unique structure. I kind of like the idea that it's almost sort of like a fancy lighthouse, which I thought was a good idea, so anyway, let's move on. Let's get a little bit closer. I did do a little bit of research into lighthouses, just a little bit. The whole top section of the lighthouse is just simply called the Lantern, but this is just technically not a lighthouse. I guess that's not really what this is, but I'm gonna call it the Lantern anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird. The top of this thing is, the top of it's kind of like a lighthouse, and then sort of what would be sort of like the core structure of the lighthouse. It's almost kind of like a lighthouse, that everything seems to be made out of glass or crystal or something like that. I know that there's supposed to be a big elevator that runs from the bottom of the Crystal Brighthouse to the top of the Lantern, but I don't see any tube or shaft or anything that kind of the elevator to go along. But then again, we're living in a magical land with ponies that can fly and have magic. Maybe the elevator just simply floats up the middle. I don't know. Anyway, let's move on. And now getting a good close-up view of the Lantern and the crystals that are housed within them. And this place is pretty nice. Getting a good look at sort of this metalwork. It's actually, it's not bad. I do kind of like this Lantern. But as a royal guard, I do have to say, these crystals are completely unprotected. I'm not saying that we should turn this place into a fortress, but there's not even a door here. I mean, the Pegasus could just literally just fly up here and just take the crystals and just fly away, and the main five would never even know about it. But I had an interesting thought about that. Can they? Or will something horrible happen to them if they try to touch these crystals? Ever since the Unity Crystals were brought together in A New Generation, we haven't seen any of the other ponies actually touch them. Maybe because they know it wouldn't be a very good idea. The Crystal Brighthouse is much, much bigger than the old lighthouse. You could fit the old lighthouse in the Crystal Brighthouse. And I think the reason why is because the crystals were levitating much higher than the lighthouse was. So the ponies probably had to build the Crystal Brighthouse sort of around these crystals as they were hovering in midair. So that must have been a fun experience for whoever built this. It's okay, be careful. Don't knock the very important crystals while you're, laying down that girder, okay? Anyway, let's move on. Here is the front of the Crystal Brighthouse, and this mural in, stained glass is pretty interesting. So yeah, obviously gotta talk about that first. So starting from the bottom, it's actually pretty easy. Is that there's a unicorn on one side, a Pegasus on the other, sort of like the rainbow thing from like the crystal Brighthouse sort of in the middle, and of course the crystal itself. On the left side, with the unicorn, we see Bridalwood. On the right side, with the Pegasus, we see Zephyr Heights. In the middle is supposed to be Maritime Bay with the crystal Brighthouse. So, I like that. Again, fancy. I mean, well, I guess, it is supposed to be, all the pony kinds coming together. So I guess it makes sense to represent all the pony kinds in this stained glass window. Because, and as we know from Friendship is Magic, that stained glass is used to, commemorate, big important events like princesses being coronated and, defeating of supervillains. So maybe that's exactly what all this is for. Is like it's supposed to represent, all the pony kinds like coming together, which essentially made the Crystal Brighthouse. So while we're here, we can look at sort of a little bit of the quote the structure of this place. It's interesting that it's a little bit asymmetrical, just a little bit, in that you can see that on the left side there's kind of like, I guess maybe 2 stories. On the right there's almost kind of 3, because the roof of that building kind of goes up 1 more story. So interesting. And in the pink sort of like column in the middle, that area I'm pretty sure is where the main 5's bedrooms are, or bedroom, because it's actually just 1 room divided into 4 areas for each of the 4 mare ponies. Something else to note is that there are these big red trees that were just simply not there before. So interesting thought is that maybe these trees came from somewhere else, because I don't think they really look native to the area. Anyway, let's move on. So that was what I'm going to describe as the lobby of this Crystal Brighthouse. Again, this place is ginormous. It's so big that Zip has enough room to comfortably fly in. And she's not even close to touching the ceiling of this place. It's like, again, you could put the original lighthouse in here. You could house my beautiful spaceship, the Morning Star. Maybe even a couple of them in this place. So good for the main 5. Roar. I must admit, I love this mosaic tile thing that's on the floor of this place. It's very nice, and because it reminds me of this thing that I made when I was a really young kid. So, roar! Anyway, let's move on. Yeah, this is where things started to kind of get difficult, but I must admit, going through 45 minutes of stuff and trying to find the perfect shot to show this was a little bit difficult. I think Tell Your Tale might have actually had a couple more, so those shots might be appearing down here at random points too. But anyway, yeah, so in this shot we get to see sort of the other view from the lobby, and that, again, this place is really big. The sort of like main building is like 2 stories high, and these stairs indicate that it's almost like a 3rd story somewhere. It looks like that door that's on like the 2nd floor, I believe that goes to the main 5's bedroom. There's 2 other doors on the 1st floor. Where they go, I don't know, but we'll probably learn about in a future episode. Maybe. At least one of those doors probably goes to the basement, because Izzy mentioned that she was looking for her box of googly eyes in the basement, so there must be a door to the basement somewhere. Yeah, and that whole area kind of goes into what's sort of like the living room. Anyway, moving on. The interesting thing that I find with this image is that there's no steps on these stairs. They're basically almost like a giant ramp. At first I thought this was odd, but considering that ponies have 4 feet, that might make more sense for them to just simply have a ramp. But it was just an interesting thing to know. But anyway, moving on. So this is first of 2 shots of what I'm going to call the living room area, which we see repeatedly in Tell Your Tale. It's basically just like this little living room area with like a television over there. So yeah, I just kind of found it interesting that there's like these little couches, lamps, stuff, and a fireplace. How nice. And of course, it's like a TV. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. I definitely think a part of a new generation and all this stuff is that, yeah, to move everything from sort of like that almost fantasy era into, the modern era, so we can do stuff like have televisions. Anyway, let's moving forward. All the way in the distance over there is Izzy's work area, and I like that. I must admit I didn't really notice it before, but in an episode of Tell Your Tale, we actually see Izzy working in the work area, and I thought that was interesting. And again, it's a little bit difficult to see from here, but hopefully we'll get to see Izzy working there in in the future. Anyway, yeah, so that was one of the interesting things here, is that, I didn't really even realize that there's this little area over for Izzy over in the corner over there. So anyway, moving forward. I have to say, not necessarily the best shot of the kitchen area, but does get an overall view of sort of this kitchen area, which was kind of over to the right of the sort of like the living room area, because yeah, over to the left was Izzy's. Here we're now looking at the kitchen area. It's very well open. I think over to the right there was like more tables, chairs, like, you know, there was that island thing over there where they were like making the pizzas and stuff and Make Your Mark, you know, and then there's the stove and the oven and all that stuff. I kind of like them. They're sort of old-timey, but clearly semi-modern, that you can tell that this range is actually, you know, like an electric, almost sort of semi-modern range, but it still kind of looks old-timey and, you know, and stuff. It's not like a super crazy modern high-tech kitchen, which I kind of like. Even though this is clearly in the modern era, you know, it's still in some ways kind of like a lighthouse, so it kind of makes sense to have a little bit of old-timey stuff going on. I just noticed that there's kind of like a stack of books to the right of like that ventilation thing. It's like, and they're very large books too. And the ever fun thing here is that there's like this purple like trash bin, I think it is, and it's got a big rainbow on it. So anyway, let's move on. So now this is where things really get interesting, because we are now inside the main five's bedroom. My first thoughts on this is either an interior designer's dream or nightmare. The main five, again, are very different, so to make a bedroom that would suit all five of them would be really hard. It's kind of interesting that each of the main five have like their own little area to like, you know, decorate and, you know, make their own. The other interesting thing here to note is that each of the main five also have kind of like a stained glass window. I think they're sort of related to the main five, but they're not like directly related to them. It's not like just their pure cutie mark. The other interesting thing about this room in Make Your Mark is I don't think there's a door out of here, because I was going through the shots and it's like when we flip around to where the camera is now, there's just a big symbol of like the crystal, but there's no door. There's no obvious door or way out of this place, so we're never getting out of here. But the good news is, in Tell Your Tale, there actually was a door. Obviously, there's a door here, but I just thought that was amusing. This is probably one of the better shots of the whole of this area, so we're gonna probably just stay with this one for a while. So starting from the left, we see Sunny's area. That's an interesting thought. Is that tie-dye, or is that just simply like an effect of the light coming through the stained glass window? Anyway, so yeah, so looking over at Izzy's, it's like, I kind of like Izzy's. I did like the fact that Izzy has this like hanging basket like bed thing, and it's actually quite large too. But I really like that, and I think that definitely suits her. So moving on to the thing that's kind of behind the sort of the core crystal glowing prisbeam energy thing. But yeah, I think behind that, you know, sort of in sort of like the fifth area, because there's kind of two on one side, two on the other, and then there's sort of one kind of in the middle. It seems like just sort of like a common area with maybe some sofas, some chairs, where the main five can just kind of just sit and just look out the window and stuff. So yeah, we're gonna go on to Zip's a little bit. I actually really like Zip's area. I didn't realize that, oh, her bed is actually on like a second level. So because of that, she kind of has sort of like this like lower desk almost area where we see later on it's filled with a few more things, and I just sort of thought that was neat. And I also remember in like Tell Your Tale that there were like these things on this front of the bed and stuff, and you know, Zip pushes a button or something and they all like retract and this wall spins around, and it's like, what are those? Are those like shelves? It's like, oh no, they're like steps so that she can like walk up into her bed area. So interesting. It's like clever. I kind of liked that. It's kind of difficult to see in this shot, but overall I really like Pips. Pips is, you know, it definitely suits her. It's actually a stage, and later we'll see that her bed, it's almost kind of like a four-poster bed, but without the four posts, and it's all fancy. And I like that she has a couple things. She has a stand for like her microphone, and she has like a desk with her laptop, and like one of those like ring illumination things. Being a social media star, that's actually pretty important for her to have something like that, and I like that. And there's also a disco ball, so da-da-da-da. I actually really like this space, but this must have been such a challenge for, you know, whoever was designing this. You have four very different ponies of four very different interests. They have to tie these spaces together somehow. I think sort of what it is. I mean, you can't really see it here, but there's actually wallpaper on each of these areas. And, you know, like Izzy's is like moons, Zip's is lightning bolts, Sunny, the sun, of course. I think Pip's was a star, and the beams on the walls kind of separate each area. But overall, I think that this was kind of successful. I would almost love to hear what an actual interior designer thinks of the space. Oh no, this is terrible. It's like, oh no, this actually works really well. Maybe a little bit of both. Anyway, let's move on to the next picture. Please excuse the green vines on the wall. This is pretty much one of the only times where we kind of get to see across to that area over there. And there's some like chairs and stuff over there. Yeah, that might be the back of the Crystal Brighthouse. Sorry, that's just the engineer and me going, I want to figure this out. Anyway, moving on. And I love that scene. It's like Izzy was so the little kid on Christmas morning. But the thing I really wanted to focus on, this was a halfway decent picture of Sunny's room area. I don't know how you want to call it, but anyway, Sunny's area. We got a good look here at the stained glass window. Yeah, it looks like her blanket is not tie-dyed. It's just simply the light coming through the stained glass window. Oh, I just noticed that behind, Sunny, there's like these little look like cards. It's like, oh, maybe these were like little things that she made for her dad when she was just a filly. So no. On the wallpaper, we see that she has like the sun. The stained glass windows of each of the ponies are kind of interesting. They're not just simply, okay, here's their cutie mark. It's like, okay, obviously it's sun related, but this is definitely not just simply her cutie mark. So I kind of like that. So moving on. It's a nice picture of Sunny. But we also kind of get to see across the room at her sort of like area. Pretty sure that those things behind Sunny are like cards and like little drawings she did when she was a filly. So no. I noticed a couple other things here, like up in that shelving area, almost sort of a thing. Is that it looks like it's a picture of Sunny, probably when she was younger. Oh, look at Sunny's skates! Yay! But more importantly, there's the picture of her and her dad. Aw, I like that. That's exactly where it should be, right next to her bed. So now we get a decent picture of Izzy's. In some ways, there's not a lot going on here. Yeah, it's mostly this giant hanging bed, which I think is really nice. This sort of thing that's hanging from the ceiling, I'm not really sure what it is. Paints, easels. It's a very nice, hoof crafted, arts and crafts kind of stuff. So definitely very Izzy, and I like it. Now we've jumped across the room over to Zip's area. And that, we get another good look at, like, Zip's stained glass window. And also her night vision thermal x-ray goggle things that were in an episode of Tell Your Tale. Yeah, Zip's stained glass window it's definitely related to her, but this is definitely not just simply her cutie mark, which I kind of like. Oh, yeah, and there's sort of like a lightning bolt in, like, sort of like dulled down versions of her colors painted on the walls. So, I really like Zip Space. It's very, I would say, functional. So now, a little bit closer into sort of like her almost sort of like a desk work or maybe play area. We see a laptop over on the left. We see what looked like lamps, maybe speakers and other things. I kind of like this almost like chair thing that she has next to it. I really like that she has like a small version, or maybe it's just a photo of the portrait of them and their mom when they were just fillies. It's like, no. Again, please excuse the green vines on the wall. This was pretty much the only decent shot of Pip's area. Anyway, you could see that, she's got a laptop with, like, the ring light, stand for the microphone, a disco ball, of course, a mirror. Actually 2 mirrors, a big one and sort of, I think, another one over on the right. And, a big, again, I'm a computer programmer, not an interior designer. I don't know what the thing above the bed is called. But, it kind of reminds me of those fancy 4-poster beds, except it doesn't have any posts. So, it has a big fancy thing with what looks like a microphone on it and curtains. And, of course, the whole thing's on a big stage. Definitely very Pip. I like it. Flipping across the room to sort of get the opposite view. And not to mention, a nice picture of the main 5, too. There's a hat, on like a hat rack. I think Sunny also had a hat on a hat rack. But here we get a almost okay view of her stained glass window and it's just sort of a star. Again, that's pretty much all we could see. So, still, interesting. So ends our little trip around the Crystal Brighthouse, which I'm sure we haven't even scratched the surface on, because there's whole areas and stuff I don't think we haven't even been to yet. Supposedly there's a basement somewhere. I think that area that's kind of on like that sort of almost third level on the right of the Crystal Brighthouse, I don't think we've seen yet. It could just be something boring like an attic or something. Overall, I really like the Crystal Brighthouse. It's definitely very interesting. It's definitely different. I overall like it. I think it's, you know, fairly functional. In some ways, it might be a little bit too big for just 5 ponies. Again, like that central like lobby area, it's like there's a lot of empty space. You could divide that area into a whole separate floor and still have bazillions of room left, but it's still a really, really nice place because it's built out of really nice materials. I think even when we went up to the lantern, the floor might have been marble. At the same time, each of the main 5 have made their own little area in it. Like Izzy has her own little work area in one of the corners and sort of like the lobby area. Each of the main 5, you know, have their own little area inside sort of like the bedroom area. I like that, you know, each, you know, pony has a place here. And it's just a really beautiful place and I really like it. I think it really fits in Maritime Bay. Yes, it's an unusual structure to say the least, but doesn't feel quote unquote artificial or forced. It's like, yeah, like Twilight's Castle was clearly designed to be a playset that, you know, Hasbro was gonna make. And I must admit, there's kind of that kind of feeling here, but at the same time, they made it work. It feels like, okay, it's kind of bizarre, but I could see someone almost making a structure like this. And it accomplishes the 2 things that the Crystal Brighthouse really needed to accomplish, which was, you know, to create this space for the main 5 to live in, but also house the Unity Crystals, again, the most important artifacts in all of Equestria. Probably would have been a good idea to have a door at the top of that place, but even so, you know, this is, I think, overall a very successful design. I like it, and I look forward to coming back here, learning more about it, and exploring it some more. So, roar! So, I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, thank you for commenting, liking, and subscribing, and until next time, this is Blue Star. Stay strong, and pony on. Blue Star out.